No, but thank you for coming out. It does mean a lot. I do appreciate that because this is what I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to be a comedian. Growing up, I'd tell my parents that, and they were like, "Ooh, maybe you should go to uni and get a degree." And so I did. I went to uni and I studied philosophy. And my parents were like, "Ooh, maybe you should get into comedy." But no, philosophy is good. The most annoying thing about philosophy is that people like to talk to you about philosophy, even if they haven't studied it themselves. Like one time after a show, a man came up to me and he said, "What's your philosophy?" And I said, well, my thesis was about whether or not the universe is deterministic in nature and whether or not all the world's events had to occur in the order they did, and could our concept of free will survive in such a universe, or do we have to do a complete overhaul of our understanding of metaphysics? And then I said, what's your philosophy? And he said, don't sweat the small stuff. And I was like, no, they didn't teach us anything practical like that. No, when you said philosophy, I didn't realise you meant the kind that could be sung about by an animated warthog and meerkat. No, but philosophy was good. And back at uni, I had to tutor students in philosophy. I had to tutor students in philosophy. And actually, 2,000 years ago, Socrates, he was put to death for teaching children philosophy because they thought he was corrupting the youth. So I'm a bit of a bad boy. But I had to teach ethics, and in ethics you cover a lot of controversial subjects, and I had to teach the ethics of abortion. It was a very short course. They cut it off at 12 weeks. But we had an in-class test, and a woman in her essay, she wrote, "Is abortion ever justified? I will answer this question with a definitive no, crossed out. Yes, crossed out. No, crossed out. Yes, crossed out. No." And I was like, are you sure you want to be anti-abortion? Because you seem prone to making mistakes. But no, I gave her a B for that. A plan B. But but philosophy was good. They asked us a lot of tough ethical questions. Like they asked me, would you ever steal a loaf of bread to feed your family? And I said yes. And they were like, good, because you're a philosophy major. I don't even need to finish the joke. All right. The show's going to be half as long tonight. That's your fault, but no. But I left to do comedy, and comedy's going well. I was recently nominated for an award. I don't need that. But I was nominated for Breakthrough Comedian of the Year, and that's an award they nominate you for if your career's taken a step up. If you've broken through. But the thing is, 2 years ago, I won Breakthrough Comedian of the Year. So what I've learned is actually my career's suffered a massive setback, and I've almost clawed myself back to where I was 2 years ago. No, but comedy is going well. I recently left my job to do comedy. I have to be back tomorrow at 9, but no, I'll tell you what I've been up to lately. I bought a Mattress Protector. Yeah, things are going pretty well for me. I didn't know what one was. My mate told me to get it. And I was like, oh, I don't think I need one of those, because I've been sleeping for 30 years and no one has ever stolen my mattress before. I don't need to pay for that service. If someone comes in, they'll see me on the mattress and they'll go, oh no, that must be the Mattress Protector. Whenever I see a mattress on the side of the road, I think I would never let that happen to you. I'll do anything to protect my queen. King single is what I call myself. But if I need to protect my mattress, I'll just store it with my other valuables, under another mattress. But it's such a relief to have a mattress protector, because you know how before when you'd have guests over and they immediately make a beeline to your bedroom and then they lift up your doona and then they lift up your top sheet and then they lift up your fitted sheet and inspect how clean your mattress is. So it's such a load off my mind. I don't understand why the mattress gets hundreds of layers of protection when the other part of the bed we lie down on, the pillow, gets one flimsy pillowcase. Because I've looked at my pillow without the case on before, and I've thought, is my shampoo made of curry? Chana masala by Fructus. My niece wanted to have a pillow fight with me. I've given her pink eye. Someone told me you can get a pillow protector. And I was like, surely at this point it'd be easier if I wore a protector. But I had to get all this linen. I had to get this stuff because I had to move apartments recently. And to help me move, I hired movers. And movers is a very strange occupation because you pay them to do their job, but then you feel obligated to help them do the job that you just paid them to do. Like I got a taxi here. I wasn't like, oh, I'll sit on your lap and do the steering wheel. Are there any movers in tonight? No. I was going to do crowd work with them. No, but they're never around to help me with my job, are they? First applause break of the show, targeted at the working class. Who says Melbourne's out of touch? But no, and for my new place, I tried to buy a desk online. I tried to buy a desk, but when I did, I immediately got an email back, and it said your order was unsuccessful as you do not meet our security standards. And I was like, am I too dangerous to own a desk? So I hope you all feel safe at night knowing I'm not out there with a desk. I was furious. I wanted to write an angry letter, but I had nowhere to write it. And it's just like, why do they think I'm too dangerous to own a desk? And also, where am I going to write my manifesto now? On the wall in blood again. if you laughed at that joke, that means you think I look like someone. No, fair cop I do, but no, I wouldn't do that. I'm a normal guy. I like the same things you like. I like music. I like music, but I hate when songs end with a fade out. Where instead of an ending, the singer just repeats the same line over and over again, and slowly gets quieter and quieter. It's such lazy songwriting. Just write an ending to your song. You wouldn't accept that with anything else. Like, you wouldn't read a book where instead of an ending, the pages just got smaller and smaller until you couldn't read them. I just think it's unacceptable that artists think they can get away with that. And I just think it's unacceptable that artists think they can get away with that. And I just think it's unacceptable that artists think they can get away with that. And I just think it's unacceptable that artists think they can get away with that. And I just think it's unacceptable that artists think they can get away with that. And I just think it's unacceptable that artists think they can get away with that. A smarter comedian would have done that at the end of their show. But we have to keep going. Oh God, I've done the ending too soon. God, I did an abortion joke at the top. This is just, God, it's all. It's all right. Sorry, look, I'm sorry that the structure of the show's still not there yet. I know there's some things you probably won't like. That's fine. We can talk about it after the show. Let's talk about it after the show. But if we do, don't. Get aggressive with me. Don't try anything funny. Don't get mad at me. Because just so you know, I will have a free hit on you. And I will bash you. Now, for those who don't know what this is, if you look at a circle below someone's waist, that means they get a free hit on you. And if you're sitting there like, I've never heard of this before, I don't subscribe to that, well, you sound a lot like me in primary school, right before I got punched. I feel like I've been doing this a while now. Literally not one of you has looked away. You're all just sitting there like, oh no, we could take him. But no, you should be worried because I could, hit you now, and I could, so you should be worried, because I could, if I wanted to. No, I will. No, I will. I would. If I will if I had. No, you should be worried. You should be. I will. I could hit one of you right now. You should be. No, I will. All right, fine. All right, you. All right. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pretend to hit you, and if you could just act like it hurts to send a message to the rest of the audience, okay? So just I'm only gonna pretend to hit you, but just so you know, if I wanted to, I could really hurt you. I could rip your throat out. I've done it before. No, do you remember Shinzo Abe? I can tell by the reactions in the room that the people of Melbourne recognise the name a bit more than the people of Brisbane, but he was the former Prime Minister of Japan. I don't know, maybe you saw a couple of headlines about him a few years ago, but maybe you keep scrolling on Facebook because you felt like you got the gist, or I don't know. Actually, Fall Out Boy did a cover of We Don't Start the Fire. They mentioned him in that. I don't know if you listened to that or not. You did? Oh, yeah, it's not a very good song, is it? It's not. There's not. I feel like Fall Out Boy, they had this great pop punk sound in the early 2000s. They released this 5 amazing albums. From Under the Cork Tree, Take This to Your Grave, Filet of Dough, Finny on High. But then they went on hiatus about 2008, 2009. And when they came back, I just felt like the sound of the band was completely changed. Now it's all synthetic drum machines. They're doing Disney covers. They're doing, just my whole childhood sound. This music that I loved as a kid has just been complete. Sorry, what were we talking about? I was going to punch you. Yeah, okay, you ready? And that goes for all of you. No, I'm aware I don't cut a physically intimidating figure. I know people don't perceive me that way. I think that goes when people find out I'm vegan. Because I am vegan. But there's lots of stereotypes out there about vegans. Like everyone thinks that vegans are skinny and low in energy. But no, that's not true. I'm here to show you that vegans are also fat and low in energy. Like I went bungee jumping, and I didn't realise this, but when you go bungee jumping, they write your weight on your hand in permanent marker in what I describe as an offensively large font. But I was like, this is great, because now I am ready to jump off a bridge. But as they're writing your weight on your hand, you feel a need to explain yourself. Oh, I just had lunch. I just had a pretty big lunch. I just had two pretty big lunches. I just had 2 pretty big lunches every day for the past 5 years. A lot of people say they struggle with their weight. Personally, I found it quite easy to get this fat. I put up no resistance. And now the issue is these jokes go well enough that it's now in my economic interest. Yeah, every time you laugh, that adds a calorie. I know I should lose weight. I know I should, but I don't want to end up like those people who write about their weight loss journey on Facebook. Like I saw someone do it recently, and his post was so confusing. I'll share it with you. Maybe you'll be able to make heads or tails of it. But he put up this post, and he said, the benefits of losing weight haven't just been physical. They've been emotional as well. Like now I can spend more time riding bikes with my wife. Now I can read to my kids. And I was like, read to your kids? I was like, how fat were you that you forgot how to read? Sorry, little Timmy, I've had a spaghetti bolognese. There'll be no story time tonight. And I wanted to know what he meant by this, and so I read his Facebook post. I read the whole post, and it was a very long post, because he had just learned to read and write, but not to edit. And he didn't explain what he meant, and I wanted to know, so I sent him a message asking. I sent him a DM, but he didn't reply to me. He just left me on scene. And I was like, oh, he must have put the weight back on. But no, I think the reason I got big was from going out to restaurants too often, eating at restaurants too often. And I like that we're from countries with minimum wage and labour laws, because I hate that American system of having to figure out a tip at the end of your meal. But there are some places you go here, and when you go to pay, it pops up on the card reader, do you want to leave a tip? And you have to push no in front of the person the tip would be going to. That'd be like if every time you didn't put coins in the Ronald McDonald House box, they live streamed it to the children. sometimes when it's popped up, do you want to leave a tip? I've had the waiter push no for me. And I always think, God, how low is your self-esteem? But mostly I just feel relief to be out of that awkward situation. I'm like, that's good customer service. If only there was some way I could show my appreciation. But sadly, the money's mine. Also, sorry, while I was here, I was hoping there are some comedians who can improvise a whole scene based off a single word from the audience, and I was hoping I could practice that tonight. If it doesn't go well, we can just edit it out. But I was hoping we could, I'll get any word from the crowd, and I'll act out a scene. So if you don't mind indulging me, I'll just try that tonight. If I could just get a word, and I'll act out. If I could just get any word from the crowd. Okay, don't heckle. All right, but if I could just get any word, just any word from the crowd. Okay, sorry, I wasn't listening then. Actually, that was on me. But if I could just get any word.
Insomnia.
Okay, it'll have to be an English word that we all know. Just a word everyone knows, But, okay, don't try get meta with it. Don't try outsmart the bit. But if I could just get any word.
Comedy.
Okay, one at a time. It'll have to be. But if I could just get any word, just any word.
Jandals.
Did you say jandals? All right, could I get a word from the audience, please? Just any word. And you'll have to say the word aloud. I'm sorry, that's part of it. You can't just think it. What was that?
Stream.
All right, I think I heard pyramid. All right. And I'll knock on the. No, I'll answer the. I'll answer the door and hello, and your name is pyramid. No, and your job is pyramid. And you've brought some pyramid. Can I get another word for the audience? No, we'll have to ditch that bit. You guys are terrible at coming up with things on the spot. But no, I don't just do improv. I do. I do exciting things as well. Like I went to a theme park. But I didn't understand why they made us wait in line for the roller coaster. They made us do one of the most boring things in the world before they made us do one of the scariest things in the world. You shouldn't go from 0 to 100 like that. They should slowly graduate you up, expose you to scarier and scarier things, so that way you're ready for the roller coaster. Like while you're waiting in line, they should make you walk past a group of 13-year-olds who are waiting at the train station. And then they should make you go and get dinner with a friend of yours and one of their friends that you haven't met before. And then your friend gets up to go use the bathroom. They should make you walk behind someone who you're faster than, but you're not so fast, so that when you try go round them, you have to walk awkwardly next to them for too long. And then something pops up on the footpath, so you have to go back behind them again. And then at this point, I think you'd be ready to throw yourself in front of the roller coaster. I didn't actually get on the roller coaster. I was too scared. But my friend, he tried to convince me. He was like, if you don't get on that roller coaster, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. And I was like, I don't think that's true. I don't think I'm going to be lying on my deathbed, like... I have to go to the Gold Coast. I don't think I'm going to be washing dishes and then I'll sigh. And then my partner will come and put their arms around me and go, oh, it's that damn coaster again, isn't it? And I'll go, no, I haven't thought about the coaster in 20 years. And then I'll call our 6 children down. Maverick, Cyclone, Twister, Goliath. And Batman the Ride. My partner will be like, oh, you dreamt about the coaster last night. I'm like, no, I didn't. And they're like, yes, you did, because all last night you were like this. And then in the morning you tried to pay $40 for a photo of it. And I'm like, no, when I was doing this, I was dreaming about standing outside a used car dealership. That's the end of the roller coaster material. I learned recently that people have different levels of ability of imagination. The example they always use is of trying to imagine an apple, and there are some people that can, picture it in full colour in their head. There are some people who can only picture things in black and white, and there are some people who can't even conjure any images in their head at all, which is so crazy to me because I feel like I have such a vivid imagination. Like if I shut my eyes, I can draw back into my memory to a time I had an apple. I can picture the apple there in my hand in full colour, and I can remember where I was. I'm there in my childhood home, having this apple. There's mum and dad, and they're arguing. Oh, maybe I took the last apple. Oh, that's right. And Dad's getting up. He's going outside, and he's getting into the car with his friend Linda from work. Oh, they're driving off. Oh, they're probably off to the supermarket to get more apples. That's all right. I've still got my Red Delicious, so juicy. And there's Mum. Oh, and she's crying. No, that's okay, Mum. There'll be more apples. And some people can only imagine that in black and white. And I find do you guys like impressions? All right, here's my impression of a comedian struggling to come up with new ideas for material. Do you guys like impressions? No, I am very lucky I get to do this job because I used to have a day job. I used to have an office job, and I used to have a horrible boss, a terrible boss. And obviously, I for legal reasons, I can't say his name, so I will have to call him a cunt. And I ended up leaving the job because everyone said I was the funniest person in the office. But before I left the funeral home, actually the boss said something to me in the job interview that I think caused quite a lot of controversy. Actually, we should get it right for the. Is it controversy or is it controversy? All right, okay. All right. Well, regardless, it was quite controversial. And he asked me, "Are you okay with working with people from different cultures?" Which is a question designed to only weed out dumb racists. And I was like, "Yeah, that's fine." And he was like, "Great, because we've got all sorts here. We've got English people, we've got Irish people, we've got Australians." And I was like, wow, what an exotic blend. of white people. And also at the time I just started doing stand-up comedy. So on my CV under the hobbies section I wrote stand-up comedy, and they saw that and they said, "Oh, could you tell us a joke?" And so I told them a joke I just recently written. I said, people care about the environment, and I've learnt a tip to help the environment I thought I'd share with you all. The tip is pee when you shower. Yeah, apparently it's supposed to help you save water, though I'm not sure how, because now I'm having 3-4 showers a day. I hate when I have to wake up in the middle of the night for a shower. Well, I'm glad you laughed. They did not enjoy, and I was like, why do I even have to tell jokes for the, it had nothing to do with the job. I was like, do they do that with other people's hobbies? Like, if I'd written down rock climbing, where they've been like, get on that bookshelf, prove it to us. Like, I wouldn't have minded telling jokes in the job interview if it had something to do with the job I was applying for, like if I was applying to be... Well, I guess stand-up comedian is the only job I can think of where you need this skill, which, I mean, is effectively what this is right now, is an interview for me to become a stand-up comedian, and you guys are the interview panel, and I have to impress you, even though you've given me no indication that you could do this job. And I can see some of you drinking throughout the job interview. Has anyone seen me do stand-up comedy before? Okay, well, so those are my references. If you haven't seen me before, I'm good. No, actually, this show earlier in the year was nominated for Best Show at the Melbourne Comedy Festival. So if you're not enjoying the show, you're wrong. I was very lucky to leave that job and go get to do comedy, because I'm very grateful I get to do comedy. I'm very lucky, because comedy, it allows me to travel, all over the world. And recently I was flying from Auckland to Wellington, and that doesn't normally get a laugh. Apparently it's a particularly crack-up flight route to you people. You go just cracking up and moving from point A. You could have just stayed home and watched the flight paths on the globe. Anyway, so I was flying from Auckland to Wellington. Even a second time. Is the flying too much for you? Have you not been on a plane before? Is the flying's too much? All right. So I was driving from Auckland to... We're filming this. There's no... there's no way that the rest of the story is going to be able to live up to me merely describing moving from point A to point B. Yeah. So I was flying from Auckland to Wellington, and I was sat next to a man who couldn't speak English. He could only speak Spanish. But luckily I'd taken a couple of years of Spanish in high school, so we were able to have a very fulfilling conversation about the numbers 1 to 10 and where the library was. And as the plane took off, he fell asleep or had a siesta. Still got it. But he fell asleep and the plane took off, and we flew all the way to Wellington. You're going to love this next bit. And the conditions in Wellington were so bad that the plane had to turn around and we had to fly all the way back to Auckland. And as we landed in Auckland, he woke up and he looked out the window and he said, "Wellington?" And I was like, oh, how am I going to explain this? And I was like, do you remember where the library was? It's still in the same spot. I mentioned earlier about being a vegan. You know, I don't like to talk about my views on stage because I'm always worried about. I don't want to be one of those comedians who starts bandwagoning. You know, starts supporting a social cause, but only after it's already become very popular. You know, I hate that. You know, like there are comedians in New Zealand who do jokes about how New Zealand should legalise gay marriage. Even though it's already been legal there for 10 years, you know, and it's the best decision our government's ever made, you know, but I hate that sort of acting like you're a martyr for what you think, but really you're just saying something everybody in the room already thinks, you know, I hate that, you know, I can't stand that. But there is one social cause I support. I think women should be allowed to vote. All right, I was expecting applause for that. Apparently, I'm the only person here who thinks that. That's fine. I'm not afraid to go out on a limb here and say women should be allowed to vote. You know, I've talked about it before on stage. You know, a woman in the crowd said, "What about equal pay?" And I was like, "One thing at a time, ladies." You know, I'm trying to get you the vote, but men in the room, do you think women should be allowed to vote? Okay, a lot more silent than I would have liked. I don't need to ask the women what they think because I'm already speaking for them. Are you there, woman? Who did you vote for? Yeah.
I don't remember.
You don't. So maybe not every woman should be allowed to vote, but most should. Most should. I don't have time to get into the nuance of my views, but I think, you know, obviously I think women should be allowed to vote. You know, obviously I think women should be allowed to vote. You know, obviously I think women should be allowed to vote. You know, obviously I think women should be allowed to. You know, obviously I think women should be allowed to vote. You know, obviously I think women should be. You know, I think men should get 2 votes, but I don't know. No, I feel like given how quiet the men were earlier, I should clarify that is a joke. And I'm concerned I'm now operating on a level of irony you cannot reach. But no, but I think my deep respect for women comes from my partner. But my partner and I, we went through a tough time because we had a pregnancy scare because my partner, she was late, you know. You know, she was late. You know, she was late. You know, for her abortion. I like that joke because either you laugh, which means you think the joke is funny, or you go, ooh, which means you thought I had a girlfriend. Some of the applause is hurtful, actually. But no. I did meet a woman recently, and she told me that her and her dog are on the same antidepressant. And I was like, that's tough. You know, because normally you get a dog to cheer yourself up. But imagine welcoming a dog into your life, and the dog is like, no, you're right, this sucks. You know, your emotional support dog is like, do it. But she should have realised her dog was depressed, you know. There were some Blues Clues, you know. And you get yourself a dog, to cheer yourself up, But what do you get a dog when it gets, you have to get the dog a hamster, and hope the hamster cheers the dog up to cheer you up, But what if the hamster gets depressed? Well, you have to get it a worm. Hope the worm will cheer the hamster up to cheer the dog up to cheer you up. But what if the worm, gets depressed? You have to cut it in half. Hope one of the halves is happy to cheer up the hamster, to cheer up the dog, to cheer you up. And you are going to need cheering up because you've got to live with the guilt of cutting a worm in half. She asked me to dog sit for her. Well, I say dog sit, it was suicide watch, but she was like, don't listen to him, his collar's tight enough as it is. But it would be nice to have a companion animal. You do go through tough times, you do go through hard times. But like I had a relative pass away, and I was away at the time of the funeral, and I was busy at the time of the funeral. And so I got sent a link to watch the funeral on demand. And I clicked on the link, and it took me to this web page, and it had every funeral that this place had done recently. It was like the bleakest streaming service you would ever seen. But I don't like to stop after one episode, so I binged the whole season. The writers got very lazy. Killed off a character every episode. My friends are like, "Oh, have you seen Ted Lasso?" And I'm like, "No." But have you seen Margaret Derbyshire, 1932 to 2022? Because it's a real tearjerker. I know it's a strange thing to do to watch all these funerals, but I was watching the funeral of this one guy, Mark Langford, and Mark, while he was alive, he would never have thought that his life would impact mine, would affect someone hundreds of miles away in another country, and I felt like by me, watching it, I was learning about him, and I felt like I was sort of, getting this memory of him, kind of carrying a piece of him long after he's passed, and I felt like there was something quite nice and noble in doing that. But also it was quite a boring funeral, so I thumbs down the video. I wouldn't recommend that one, but so also in my family, I'm the only one who does public speaking, and so that means at big family events, I'm always the one they ask to get up and speak. And I didn't realise this was the deal when my family surprised me with my granddad's eulogy. And so now I'm looking at my 87-year-old nana like, got another gig coming up. And so now whenever I'm with my nana, I have to think, would this make a good story for the eulogy? Because I wanted to honour her, I want it to be nice, but, because eulogies, they're very odd for comedians, with jokes, we can go around to different places and test them out, but a eulogy is one and done, like I can't go to another funeral, and they'll be like, oh, how do you know the deceased? And I'll be like, oh, I don't, but I've got a big funeral coming up. And also it means my family watched me do comedy and they were like, oh, this guy would be perfect for a funeral. But so now whenever I'm with my nana, and she does something interesting, I'll write it down. And she's like, oh, is that for one of your little skits? And I'm like, you'll see. She won't. They're all nice stories, though. I'm not going to roast her. That'll be later at the cremation. But I thought I'd cut out the middleman. I asked my nana, I was like, oh, do you have any good jokes? And she was like, oh, I've got some observations about mattress protectors. I was like, that's not funny. That's not funny. I'll write them down, but that's not funny. So not many people like me, okay, interesting. Interesting response. Normally the whole crowd sort of goes, oh, and then I use that to move on to the next bit. But tonight there was sort of quite a lot. No, too late for that, isn't it? Yeah. Nice to try, but it's quite delayed. Anyway, so not many people like me. Oh, that's so much worse. That is. What is the worst is that one person, they were doing a bang-up job. They came in nice and early, and then I could hear the delay in the rest of you as you all sat there and thought, are we really doing this? And the answer is yes. And anyway, so not many people like me. No, okay, don't force it, all right? We want a nice natural response. Anyway, so it's not great for my self-esteem to have to repeat that over and over. So not many people like me. Okay, I've lost some of you now. It feels like a grim Mexican wave sweeping across the crowd. So this part doesn't normally take this long. Anyway, so not many people... Don't laugh. All right. So not many people like me. Okay, no. If I could feel the enthusiasm drop. This is... you're lucky I'm here. I don't have to be in Melbourne. My career's going well in New Zealand. I'm twice nominated for Breakthrough. It doesn't matter. Oh my God. I know you're all going to be at work on Monday. They'll be like, oh, how was the show? And they'll be like, oh, it was really good. There was this bit where he flew from Auckland to Wellington. And I'll be like, that doesn't sound like comedy. That just sounds more like itinerary. But no. That was crack up. Oh, how long do we have? All right. Okay, we've still got time. All right, All right, I'm going to start the show again. All right. And we're going to do it properly. All right, so I'm going to go. I'll go backstage. I'll just... All right. I know. Okay, almost all of you can still see me. Okay. All right, Melbourne. Are you ready for a great night of comedy? Make some noise. Please go crazy wild for your comedian. It's Ray O'Leary. So not many people like me. Until we get it right. All right, Melbourne, are you ready for a great night of comedy? Make some noise. Please go crazy wild for your comedian. It's Ray O'Leary. So not many people like me. Because of my involvement in the Zodiac killings. All right, thank you so much. That's been the show. Thank you so much for coming out, everyone. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you.